Hello and welcome back to the Algebra 1 videos. This is a new unit. This is going to be Unit 9, and we're going to be talking about Section 1. And we're going to be solving quadratic equations using the zero product property. So the first thing we want to do is look at our objectives. We want to solve problems by factoring quadratic equations. And then we want to be able to write quadratic equations given the rational solutions. So the first thing we want to do is we want to look at this thing called the zero product property, okay? And what this says is that the zero product property says that if a product equals 0, so if you take two numbers and set it and it equals zeros, then at least one of the factors must be 0, okay? So over here is your zero product property, okay? And what that says is that if you have some number a times some number b, and if you multiply these two numbers together and you get 0, then either a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0, okay? And that's what that means. Okay, so what I want to do here is take a look at these problems, okay? What I know is that 2 times the number 0 is going to give me 0, okay? So now, just looking at that, that's pretty obvious. This is what we know. Now, if I look at 2 times the number a is equal to 0, then let's think about it. 2 times a number gives me 0. Then we know that a must equal 0. Okay, now if I decided to solve this and divide by both sides by 2, the 2's divide out, and I get a is equal to 0 divided by 2. 0 divided by 2 is still just going to give me 0. Okay, now if I have two numbers multiplied together to give me 0, okay, just like what we say up here, okay, then I know that either a is going to equal 0 or b is going to equal 0. Okay, so it's going to be one or the other. All right, so now how does this work using quadratics? So what you've been doing is you've been factoring quadratics. You've been getting this form of an equation where you have a binomial times a binomial. All right, and so what I want to do is look at this and say, all right, well, if I have two binomials, two quantities being multiplied by each other and you get 0, then what I would want to do to solve this equation is I would say, well, x plus 3 is going to equal 0, or x minus 8 is going to equal 0. So I set both of them equal to 0. I'm going to go ahead and solve both of these. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. And I get that x is equal to negative 3, okay? Or on this one, I'm going to add 8 to both sides, and I get that x is equal to positive 8, okay? So these are my solutions, okay? So my solutions, and you can just, finish it right there, but if you wanted to write out your solutions, we would have x equals negative 3, or x is equal to 8. Okay, and those are our answers. That's what we're looking for, all right? So what we want to do, we want to do is solve this quadratic equation by factoring. So what I have is this. I have this equation here, x squared minus 14x plus 45 is equal to 0, okay? And I want to solve this, all right? So the first thing I want to do, here are your steps. Okay, we want to write the equation in standard form, setting one side equal to 0. So this is already done for us. Okay, where I have x squared minus 14x plus 45. Notice how my degree goes from 2 to 1 to 0. So this is in standard form. And we set that equal to 0. The next thing we want to do is we want to factor this. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the box method real quick and factor this polynomial. So I've got x squared, I've got positive 45, so, and I want to get negative 14x out of that. So two numbers that multiply to x squared is just going to give me x and x. Two numbers that multiply to 45, but when they add together, they need to give me negative 14. So when I factor that, I'm going to put a minus 5 here and a minus 9 here. So I get negative 9x and negative 5x. Okay, and then I combine my like terms here, and that gives me negative 14x, and that's what we got in the middle, so that's good. This is factored correctly. So what I have now is this. I have the equation, or the product of two binomials. I've got x minus 5 times x minus 9, and I'm going to set that equal to 0. All right, so that's the first thing I've done, is I've just factored that polynomial. Now I'm going to apply the zero product property. I'm going to start at the step that I had on the problem above. Okay, and so then what I want to do is I'm going to set the first one, x minus 5 equal to 0. So I'm going to do this, x minus 5 equals 0. Or I'm going to do x minus 9 equals 0. Okay, so here I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So I get that x is equal to 5. Okay, that's one of my solutions. The other solution I'm going to add 9 to both sides, and so then I get x is equal to positive 9. Okay, so my solutions, okay, we're going to do x equals 5 or x equals 9. Okay, and those are my answers. Now what I could do is, and so we've done this. We've done all the way up to step 4. Now we could check our solutions for reasonableness. Okay, what that means is that I plug 5 and 9 back into this equation, and we should get 0 as a result. Okay, for time purposes, I'm not going to do that, but I'm just going to move on to the next one. Okay, so it says find the roots of the function by factoring. Okay, so when it says find the roots, a root is the solutions. Okay, these are the solutions to the equation. Okay, so same thing as a solution. Okay, and let's do this. All right, let's go ahead and factor 6x squared minus 2x minus 20. I'm going to zoom in so you guys need to write small. Now, what I notice about this problem is that I can automatically factor out a 2. Okay, so let's try and make this a little bit easier. I'm going to factor out a 2 from this, and I'm going to be left with 3x squared minus an x minus a 10. Okay, and I want to factor this. All right, first things first, I'm going to set this equal to 0. So 0 is equal to 2 times 3x squared minus x minus 10. All right, so always look to factor first if you can. That will make the factoring process a little bit easier. So let's do the box method on this, and I'm going to put 3x squared and a negative 10 here. So what I see from that is I'm going to have 3x and x, okay? That's the first part. Okay, the next part, we're going to have 2 and 5. So let's do this. Let's do a minus 2 here and a positive 5 here. All right, so when I do that, all right, I'm going to get 5 times x is going to give me 5x. Okay, and then I've got negative 2 times 3x is going to give me negative 6x. Now, when I combine my like terms here in the middle, negative 6x plus 5x is going to give me negative x, which is what we were looking for here. So this is good. Okay, so now, here's what all this stuff factors to, all right? So I've got, I'm going to rewrite my equation here, all right? I've got 0 is equal to 2 times 3x plus 5 times x minus 2, okay? So 3x plus 5, x minus 2. Now, you're probably wondering about this 2. This 2 doesn't really affect anything. This is a multiplier. Now, what I can do, because I am multiplying the 2 by this quantity and then multiplying it by another quantity, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 2. And what happens is the 2's divide out here, and 0 divided by 2 is still just going to give me 0. So I still just have 0 is equal to 3x plus 5 times x minus 2. Now, if you don't do this step, if you don't factor out this 2, you can still factor it and you'll still get the same answers, but your numbers are going to be bigger. And that problem was going to be a little bit harder to factor than, say, this one. If you factor this problem here, it's going to kind of be a little bit confusing. You can still do it, but it's not as easy as factoring, say, this one. Okay. All right, first things first. Okay, now that I've factored it, I've set everything equal to 0. All right, so now I've got 3x plus 5, set that equal to 0. So I'm going to write that up here. 3x plus 5, set that equal to 0. And then I'm going to set x minus 2 equal to 0. okay? Now, when I do this, all right, I'm going to subtract 5/3, or I'm sorry, 5. So I get 3x is equal to -5. Divide by 3, and then I get that x here is equal to -5/3, okay? Now, when x minus 2 equals 0, I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and what I get as a result is that x is equal to 2. So my solutions are as follows. I've got x equals 2, or I've got x equals -5/3, okay? And these are also called my roots, okay? These mean the same thing. Now, the way I figure this out, finding the roots, okay, another way to do this is to take your graph here, or your function, okay, y equals 6x² minus 2x minus 20. I'm going to plug that into Desmos, and I'm going to look at something on the graph of that. So let me put the graph in here real quick. Okay, so what I've done is I've graphed this, and I've labeled where the graph crosses the x-axis. Now, these are my roots. These are my solutions. This is what I'm looking for, okay? And, we got x equals 2. Notice that the x value that the graph crosses at is at 2. Okay, -5/3, if you take -5 and divide it by 3 and get it in decimal form, you're going to get -1.6 repeating, which is right here. Okay, so there is a way to do this on the calculator. However, you do need to do it by hand as well. All right, let's take a look here. Okay, solving a real world problem. Sean shoots a marble into the air from ground level. Okay, the function that models this scenario is this function h of t is equal to -16t² plus 48t, where h is the height of the marble in feet and t is the time in seconds. How long until the marble hits the ground? So here's what you have, okay? And we can look at a graph here too, but this is going to follow a parabolic shape. And what's going to happen is that you're going to have something like this, okay? So you want to figure out, so at what time is the height 0, okay? And that's what you're trying to figure out. You're trying to find this point right here. Now, what I can do is this, all right? What I can do is I can take this function and rewrite it and plug in 0 for my height. So I would get 0 is equal to -16t² plus 48t. Now, the other thing that I can do is I can factor out a -16t, all right? So I don't have to do the box method here. If I factor out a -16t, then I am simply left with t minus 3. Okay, now this is factored. Okay, I have one factor here, -16t, and I have another factor of t minus 3. So what I can do is this, all right? I can set each of those equal to 0, and so I'm going to do, let me do this one in blue. Okay, so I've got -16t is equal to 0. Divide by -16, divide by -16. That means that one of my times when the height is 0 is at time 0, okay? And let's think about it. At time 0, that's this point here, okay? Now the other point, t minus 3, let's set that equal to 0 and solve. So t minus 3 equal to 0. Let me add 3 to both sides, all right? I'm going to get that t is equal to 3, okay? And that's the other time. Now, you got to think about this in terms of the problem, all right? You have two solutions. You have two times at which the height is 0, okay? The first one, Sean shoots the marble into the air from ground level, okay? That's right here, okay? The model's the height, okay? Here's your height. Let me do this, height, and this is time, okay? And so, you have a maximum height here, and then it falls to the ground, and you have a height of 0, okay? That's why I'm setting this quadratic function equal to 0. All right, so now, all right, let's just graph this and let's just verify that this is what happens. Okay, so notice what happens here. Notice, first of all, the first thing that I did was I plugged in this equation here. I didn't use h of t equals -16t² plus 48t. I used y and x, okay? So that's something that, you know, if you're using Desmos, that's what you want to do to plug in this equation, okay? Other thing is, let's take a look here. 0, 0, and the point 3, 0. And that matches what we got for our solutions, okay? So you can do this graphically and use Desmos. Okay, on this next page, what we want to do is we want to write a quadratic function given the zeros. So what we see here is that we have the zeros at negative 3 and 2. So what they've done is this. So you have to start with this because they kind of skip a step here. You have to go backwards. So if you have x equals negative 3 and x equals 2, okay, what you want to do is you want to move these over and set everything equal to 0. So I would add 3 to both sides, okay, and I would get x plus 3 is equal to 0. Okay, here I would subtract 2 from both sides, and I would get x minus 2 equals to 0, okay? And that's how you get these here, okay? So you start with zeros, you make factors, okay? And then you multiply your factors together, and then you get your quadratic, okay? So let's try that here with negative 4 and 2. So if I've got x equals negative 4 and x equals 2, okay, what I want to do is add 4 to both sides here. And that's going to give me x plus 4 is equal to 0. If I have 2 here, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, and I'm going to get x minus 2 is equal to 0. All right, so now what I want to do is multiply my factors together. So I'm going to do x plus 4 times x minus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, now to do that, I mean, you could either FOIL it out or you could do the box method. I'm just going to do the box method because box method is my friend. All right? And so I've got x plus 4, and then I've got x minus 2. This is going to give me x squared. This is going to give me 4x. This is going to give me negative 2x. And then this is going to give me negative 8. So what I have here, all right, I'm going to add all these together. I've got x squared plus 4x minus 2x and then minus 8. And so that's going to give me x squared, combine my like terms in the middle. 4 minus 2 gives me 2, so plus 2x, and then minus 8. And that, my friends, is my quadratic, okay? All right, now let's do this, all right? It says write a quadratic function that has a double root of negative 6. So a double root of negative 6 means I have x equals negative 6 and x equals negative 6, okay? And so what I would do here is I would add 6 to both sides, okay? I have 2 of them, a double root, all right? And so I would get x plus 6 equals 0. I have x plus 6 equals 0. So I would take x plus 6 and multiply it by x plus 6 equals 0. Okay, let's multiply these out using the box method, because remember the box method is my friend. So I've got x plus 6 and I've got x plus 6. So that's going to give me x squared plus 6x plus 6x and then plus 36. Combine my like terms in the middle. So I've got x squared plus 6x plus 6x plus 36. Add my middle terms, and so I get x squared plus 12x plus 36. And that is my quadratic. All right, so that's the idea. All right, so not too terrible, and you can also check these graphically. Whatever you get as a result, okay, plug these into Desmos and make sure that you get these values as roots. Okay, make sure that you get a double root of negative 6. The only place where this one should cross is at negative 6. Okay, hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you soon. Good luck. Bye.